Hello, here we are at the Icon Awards at WPPI. I'm Michelle Celantano. I'm excited to be here with you today. I have with me Mauro Cantelmi and Nick Pekridis. They are going to be critiquing the images today in the category for pre-wedding, creative, and creative division, wedding creative, and pre-wedding creative. So we're going to get started. These are images that scored 79 or below in the print competition, and our judges here are going to talk about how these prints can be improved on and how the makers can elevate the images so that they can get into that awards category. So gentlemen, let's get started.
Definitely.
Do you want to say something about yourself real quick?
Well, yes, why not?
Please do.
We've got the
Tell
time,
the audience
haven't we?
about
Yeah.
yourself.
Well, my name's Mauro Cantelmi.
Wait, you can't. Can you tell me again?
No, I can't tell you. So,
Tell me.
I'll tell you one more time. My name's Mauro Cantelmi. I've been a wedding photographer for, I don't know how long now. I've photographed my first wedding at 18 years of age. And fair to say that I've been doing it for 30 years. Maybe not as long as what Nick has been doing right next to me, because he's been doing it for a while. We're from opposite sides of the world. I'm from Melbourne, or the Americans say it, Melbourne, Australia, but I'm from Melbourne, Australia.
Melbourne.
And Nick, where are you from?
Hi guys, I'm Nick Pekridis. I'm from Thessaloniki, Greece. But you know, Greeks, Melbourne has the biggest community of Greeks there. So it's the second biggest city outside of Greece, with Greeks. So I'm also I'm a third generation of wedding photographer, and I'm start shooting on the age of 13 next to my dad. So I'm already 40 years of shooting.
Wow. We're old. The three of us combined are like 150.
We're combined, we are 150. We
Yeah,
look
at
good for
least.
150,
Yeah,
don't we?
Yeah, we do.
We look really good for 150.
Well, I'm really excited to be here with you guys today. I was on the panel with you over the last 2 days, and listening to you guys just talk about the prints. And with your experience, I think the viewers today are really going to get a lot of education. So let's get started. Let's talk about that first print you have. And
Can I speak about this first?
yeah, go right ahead, Nick.
Well, let's have a good look at this print. Now, when it first turned over, I thought, wow, impact-wise, I really like the perspective as it's photographed through the staircase. The beauty of the staircase itself, the eye leads you all the way through to the subject. You know, and when you're looking at a subject where you have a light source coming from under, it can really highlight, you know, your subject. And as you can see, the bride lying down, look, the way she's lying down is working really well. Looking at it overall, I would have maybe, and I'm sure, Nick, you agree here, would have maybe liked to see her turned on the other side where the light is flooding in from the left corner. Wouldn't you agree, Nick?
Yeah, I really enjoy the image as well. I mean, the spiral composition is beautiful for her, and I really like the pose of her. The way that she's using the wedding dresses look like a mermaid, and the pose is beautiful. But what I think and agree with Mauro is that the brightest part of the image is on her legs and not on her face. So maybe if the maker didn't want to adjust the pose of the other position, he might do a better editing, like a dodge and burn of the dress and give more light to her face. And that will be possibly improve the picture to be on the next category.
Look, I totally agree with you there, Nick. I guess being wedding photographers for so long, sometimes we sort of forget the fact that, you know, we're going to be photographing models. And as wedding photographers, we're so used to the idea of working really fast, you know, because we don't have time on a wedding day. Now, you know, when you enter a category of models where you have a little bit more time on your hands, it's okay to take a deep breath. Don't you reckon, Michelle? Where you can actually just breathe easy, take your time, pose the person, look at exactly where the lighting's coming from. Not to say we don't do it on a wedding day, but we can take a little deep breath and really, really sort of home in on all those little aspects that sometimes, you know, we don't have time to do.
Quick question on this image. Do you think that the light coming in from that upper left corner is natural light, or do you think that that is potentially added strobe? And if it is strobe, would you encourage the maker to use a different modifier to, say, highlight the parts of the face that they want to photograph and maybe save themselves post-processing time and just using a more controlled lighting modifier?
Very true. Look, the answer to your question, and I'll go to Nick as well and tell me what he thinks. I think it's natural light coming through there. Nick, do you agree?
Actually, I'm not sure if it's a natural light. Maybe it's not a natural light, and because I think that if we had a natural light, we might have more light this side as well.
It could be more even.
So I think it's a softbox or something like that,
Right.
but it might be used as grids to
Right.
avoid the spit lighting on the floor and guide mostly on the face instead of shooting on the lower part.
That's a very good point, Nick. So, see, even as photographers for 30 years, you know,
Yeah.
we got to bounce off each other there. It's fantastic.
It's just a thought because I feel like instead of encouraging, post, if this is done with a strobe, we can really encourage the maker to use a different modifier that would really zero that light in on where they want it, and then they wouldn't have to do as much post-processing.
Definitely. And,
Great, guys.
as photographers, we always need to remember that, it's better photographing and have your camera in your hand, I believe, than being in front of a computer.
Yeah.
Wouldn't we agree?
Yeah, and nowadays, I mean, let's face it, there's so many companies with such portable modifiers for either, speed lights or small off-camera strobes that I think we have more availability to control more light on location now than we ever did before.
Definitely. Technology, huh?
Thank you, gentlemen.
No worries.
Yeah. Shall we go to the next image?
Yes. All right, Nick, your turn, because
And
This
before
is
we
what-
go to the next image, I really just want to stop and thank B&H for sponsoring this. This is a huge sponsorship, and we're very appreciative. And also to Critiq, who hosted all of the online live critiques that we did for the images that people entered into the competition. So thank you to those sponsors for sure. All right,
Thank you,
gentlemen,
sponsors.
next image.
All right, Nick, I'll let you start this one because I've got a lot of great things to say about this, and I'm sure you do, but I'll let you go first.
You have a lot of great things to say?
Yes.
Okay, you're going to say the great things, and I'm going to say the bad things.
All right, here we
Talking
go.
to the mic, Nick.
Yes.
They can't hear you.
I said that it's better to start telling the good things about the picture, and I'm going to start to telling what can be improved for this image to be better.
Sounds good to me, Nick. Now, looking at this image overall, impact-wise, fantastic. Now, it's not very often on a wedding that, you've got a bit of wind, you've got a veil that is flying out like that. That always works. It's always a winner. It's always a good seller for a bride, but it also adds atmosphere. I tend to find that adding a veil in your photographs can really show a bit more pizzazz in the image. There's no doubt about that. But then once your eye sort of differentiates the idea that, okay, there's the veil and there's your bride and groom, look at the amazing mood. The smile, it's not a forced smile. It's a beautiful, natural smile. Don't you agree, Nick?
Absolutely.
So, whenever you're photographing a wedding and you can catch a true, real smile, that's always better than asking a bride and groom to smile because you're never going to get the same sort of look. So, going back to what I was saying, veil flying adds mood to the shot, but also gives expression to the bride and groom. And look at the posing. I love the posing, the way the groom has tucked his arm really, really close into the bride without sort of squashing her too much, but at the same time being able to see both their faces. Now, the hand of the bride being on the chest or part of the shoulder of the groom. Sometimes what could work a little bit better is to have the hand a bit more on the chest. It maybe looks a little bit too sort of flat. Would you agree, Nick? Or yeah, hand being too flat. Maybe grabbing the collar could have worked better. But apart from that, I can't really dismiss this shot at all. I think it's actually, Michelle, I think it's a bit tough. This nearly didn't get an 80. I reckon I've got a good feeling could have done something there.
Mauro, the maker is like, darn it, why wasn't Mauro on that panel?
Well, remember, I'm only one person.
Yeah.
And that's why we have 5 judges.
That is true. That is
yeah,
why we
so,
have judges.
you know.
On the posing, if I can just jump in for a little bit.
Yeah.
I do think I like the way that he's holding her tight, but I think if his hand was on her waist under the arm and her elbow was pulled back a little bit, it wouldn't be as squished. So I think the connection between their heads is there. But as far as the body, it definitely does need a little bit of refining because that elbow gets lost and then you're seeing that little pocket of skin above his arm, which no bride really wants. But Nick, your thoughts?
So I can assume only, but this picture might be a 79 image. And that was very tough for the judges to be placed on this below 80 range image or above. But
And
that
we're
is only my
guessing.
guess.
We don't know the
Only
score.
my guess,
Yeah.
yeah. Overall, it's a beautiful image. I mean, the couple love it. And the leading lines from the veil leads you directly to their expression. And there are small problems on the pose, like you mentioned before, Michelle, which is totally agree. But for me, the most important thing is the retouching, the editing, highlights and blacks. We have no separation of the black hair of the bride with the background. So we have only a small part of the top, but overall we are missing everything. So, and also a better retouching on the back side of the head of the groom could be improved and give us that extra 1 or 2 points missing to be on the next category.
Yeah, sometimes it's just 2 or 3 really tiny things that just keep you out of that next
That's-
category for sure.
Definitely, I must say, and I guess the both of you will agree with this.
Yeah.
Is, the concept behind the photo. We haven't talked about the concept behind the
Right.
photo. A lot of photographers need to realise that when you've got a white veil, for a couple to be against the black wall, that's very striking.
Right.
And they're little points that, when you're crossing the street with your bride and groom and you see a black wall, well, there's your shot. There's your, there's your little location. Sometimes they're worrying about being under a tree, and all different little bits and pieces. So, if you've got a white veil, a black wall works so well.
Yeah.
True, totally agree.
Yeah, I agree too. I mean, expression sells here, and this is going to go in their album, and the couple is going to absolutely love it. But when we're talking about really hanging on the wall and print competition and getting into that silver level, then the small things really start to matter. So thank you, gentlemen. We'll go on to the next image.
Oh, you go first.
Beautiful concept. Beautiful, and so unusual concept. I like the idea of the footprints on the sand and the idea of creating the wedding dress with a wave. What can be improved on this image? For me, and this is only my personal perspective, and it might be improved a different crop of the image, and slightly different pose of the bride, so it's not looking so wide on the lower waist.
Well, hang on. Where would you crop this?
I would crop either, make it more panoramic,
More panoramic. Okay.
okay, so avoid the top one and maybe the lower part of the image. Or I would try to see if it works in vertical. I'm not sure,
Okay.
okay? But I think that we have so much space on top and the right and the lower that is not actually give us extra strength on the final image.
So do you think bringing the couple down into the center third?
Yes.
Yeah. So putting them, they're dead center. Is that what's throwing you off? Yeah.
Well, I guess looking at this image with fresh eyes, I think, the photographer here has to be celebrated, there's no doubt, because, there's a period in your life as a photographer, as an intermediate photographer, or as a wedding photographer that's starting, or a photographer that's experienced. You've always got to remember that, you need an image that's got to have some thought or concept put behind it, rather than just, bride and groom hugging, heads together.
Right.
So looking at this image, it needs to be celebrated because the concept is there, very fresh, and there's not many photographers out there, and I wish there was more, that could come up with a concept and think of the idea first before they actually go out on a wedding. So as I mentioned before, this image, the way the water is mimicking the dress is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, that is pretty cool.
That, like I say to everyone, when I get jealous, I know that it's a good image because I always think, damn it, I should have thought of this idea myself. So that's step one. Now, you must look at the narrative of this shot. So the beauty, as we just talked about, is the water as part of the dress, and then the groom. No one's talked about the groom yet,
Yeah.
you know. Very hard to pose people from an aerial standard. You know, we've all tried that, haven't we? Have we used drones before with a bride and groom?
Not me.
No? Nick, have you
guys
used
maybe.
a drone with a bride and groom?
No. I'm not flying a drone. I'm afraid of flying a drone, you know?
Oh, okay, fair enough. I know you just use helicopters, is that right? Okay, fair enough.
Mauro, I just
Alrighty.
sprout my fairy wings.
Oh, there you go. I need one. I need some of them too. That's for sure. But it is very, very hard to photograph and pose, I guess, any bride and groom from an aerial perspective because there's so many elements going on, and it's just an added element with a drone. Now, the way
Can
this
I just mention one thing real quick? This is the creative category.
Yes.
Which means that it doesn't have to be in camera.
Right.
So there is a possibility.
Afterwards,
Right.
yeah, the
So,
footprints,
yeah.
definitely. I was coming to that because you can
Sorry.
see they're quite perfect. Yeah.
Okay.
But when it comes to the pose itself, I really like the way both heads are quite close. The hands, they're sort of, you know, they're doing something. They look natural. Maybe the bride's right hand could have been touching the groom's other hand to give it a bit more of a perspective. If we had to improve anything here, I'd probably have to say the groom's feet could have maybe been placed across and over the top a little bit more. And if I had to put any sort of area where we could have improved this image, it's probably the footsteps. They look a little bit too sharp to me.
Okay.
A little bit too perfect. But what I love about this image is the fact that there's a narrative to it.
Right.
Where have those footsteps come from? Where have this bride and groom been? Can you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So a bit of a sliding doors sort of concept here. So, you know what? I like it, Nick. What are your overall thoughts?
Yeah, for sure. I think it was also an image that was very controversial about the judges, and it was very, very hard to be below or above an 80. You know, it also belongs to this edge of the merit and no merit category.
Perfect.
And look, guys, at the end of the day, awards won't define us, you know. So you've got to look at this image that this photograph served its purpose,
Yes, for sure.
where, you know, the bride and groom loved it.
Right. Yeah, there's always the, is it a sellable image, which is our first task as a photographer and as a business owner. But print competition really helps us grow and learn and become better and better. So kudos to everyone who entered print competition and is willing to have their images critiqued because it's not an easy thing to do. And we all grow as a community from that.
Can I add one last thing?
No, but yes. Of course.
Again, this is only my personal opinion, but I have a feeling that maybe the color palette that the maker used was not the perfect one for this image. I mean, the reddish of the skin tone
Right.
might be not work so well, and we have some reddish on the lower part of the image as well.
Right.
So maybe on this image, a black and white could be better, or desaturate.
That's a great thought, Nick. Thank you. All right.
Good point, Nick.
Yeah.
40 years, guys. That's 40 years worth.
It's 40 years.
You know, that 40 years. That's amazing.
All right, gentlemen, let's go on to the next image.
Yeah.
And again, just to let our audience know, we are in the wedding category. This is wedding creative, non-wedding day, and pre-wedding day creative. So this could have been on the wedding day or not on the wedding day in the creative category. We are here for the Icon Awards critiques at WPPI, and we want to thank B&H for sponsoring us and for Critiq as well. Gentlemen, your next image is up.
Great concept, a great idea. Again, playing with the light and different expression, and maybe it's multiple clicks or multiple, maybe made it on a Photoshop later, but still I applaud for the maker for the idea. Still, I think the use of light for this one is the major problem who makes the maker not being on the category of merit. And what I'm if I want to specify more about this, um, looking for the left side, it's too flat. We are going to the middle where we have a red brown light, but on the left side, it's too dark. The separation between the foreground or a subject or model with the background is no details. And we are going, we don't have a consistency of a light from the left to the right side. So I would expect to be, how is the last image? It should be the first image too.
Okay.
This is my
Mauro?
idea.
Well, I
Mauro,
guess, yes,
Can you tell me some more?
I can tell you. Guys, do you know
Mauro
my,
can tell me.
do you know what my surname is? Can tell me. So I can tell you. There's no doubt about that.
I know, it's so cheesy. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry, not sorry.
That's all right. Going back to the image, guys, as photographers, we paint with light.
Yeah.
And the only thing that I sort of feel, oh, well, a few things, but one of the things here, obviously, like Nick, you mentioned about the lighting. If we could have had that lighting a little less contrasting, I think would have helped a lot more. You know, as humans, we are wired in our brain to see red first. So I ask myself the question, now, why am I not seeing more of an explosion of colour? And that's simply because of the fact that the lighting's way too contrasty. Okay? So what needs to be applauded about this image is no doubt the concept. You know, before I was talking about how we all go out and we're all guilty to go out on weddings and, you know, you've got your bride and groom in front of you and it's like you don't know what to do. It's like, okay, well then just kiss. Okay, well then just bring your heads together. So again, I celebrate the fact that the photographer here has come up with the concept, multiple exposure, I'm presuming. And overall, if this photographer just keeps trying with new little ideas, and that's always been my theory, guys, is when you're photographing a wedding, each wedding that you go into, try 4 different things that you haven't done on a wedding before, whether that's lighting, whether that's a different pose, whether that's anything different that you've done on previous weddings. You'll find that your photography a year later will be totally different to what you'd photographed a year ago. So I really, really want everyone out there to truly understand that if you're always trying new little concepts, even 2 concepts, new concepts every wedding, look back at your work a year later and it looks totally different. So, Michelle, what do you think about that idea?
I think 4 is bold, especially on a wedding day. 4 is bold.
All right, let's
but
go
yeah.
2. Let's go 2.
Yeah, 2 or 3 things is, I mean, back in my days of wedding, many, many years ago. But yeah, it's always to try to push yourself to do something new. So, but let's go ahead and move on to the next image so that we can really get as many in as we can. Yeah, wow, isn't that pretty? So Nick, you get us started on this image.
Excellent pose. Excellent pose. Bullseye. I like the composition too. What I suggest and what I think that needs to be improved, control of the light. And I'm not sure if the red line on the bottom helps for the final image. But overall, I like the idea.
Perhaps moving the subject back on the other side of that line to, yeah.
Well, you know, when I first, well, I must admit, I think it's again, a little bit different. It needs to be celebrated because I do love the fact that it's got some really interesting colours coming through it. The colour palette I really like, apart from the red carpet on the ground. Now, if we were all to sort of squint a little bit and not look at the red carpet, you can see the colour palette there is just beautiful. Those pale blues and the yellows, and even, you know, the lighting sort of resembles that as well. I do believe the lighting could have improved. I think having a little bit more contrastier lighting here could have made the subject pop off the background a little bit more. And I'm just finding, and I don't know about you guys, I'd like to get both, you know, Nick and Michelle, your opinion. I'm finding that those stairs are distracting. Is it me? Or is it there's sort of the background?
The stairs are a little bit too bright behind the subject?
Yeah, a little bit too bright. What do you guys think?
I think we have so many colors that they fight each other. We have red and blue, the red line on the bottom and the blue on the top, which is fight each other, and we have the green. So we have full spectrum, and we have the yellow too. So we have the full spectrum of the colors that they are not, is not possible to work together. So a different color tonality on editing definitely will be improved the image.
I agree, Nick. Well said. 40 years, that's really coming out, that 40 years, isn't
Yeah,
it?
isn't it?
It's really coming
I
out.
wonder if there was just a little bit more detail on those side of the trees, just to really bring them out just a bit more, to create a little bit more separation, texture, and depth
Yeah.
in those sides.
Well, do keep in mind, Michelle, looks like it was photographed just at near the dusk
Yeah,
time.
for sure.
The only other thing I'd like to add is maybe I feel the cropping should have come in a little bit more on both sides.
Okay.
I definitely feel, maybe square, maybe close to square. I definitely think that could have helped a little bit more with the image. But look, I applaud the photographer
It's a
with the
beautiful
fact
location.
that, beautiful location, and the fact that he's trying. And, let's face it, guys, let's break this down. When you go out on a wedding, pulling that red carpet right across and coming up with that idea, although it maybe didn't work as well as it should have, but the photographer's got the right mind of thinking here.
It might have been there.
Yeah, maybe,
so-
maybe.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Will be easily can move the bride few steps back, and
Sure.
have the key step on the red carpet.
Yeah.
Or even more easy to change the color and make it even.
I think what happens is that there's so many pops of color and bright spots that our eye is moving around the image so much that it's then hard to come right into that beautiful center of that bride in the center. And so sometimes less is more. It's like, Coco Chanel, when you look in the mirror, take one thing off. When you look at your image, maybe remove just one thing that might be a distraction.
Good point there, Michelle. Good point.
Okay, gentlemen, let's move on to your next image.
Oh, all right. Actually, Nick, you start with this because I want to hear. I want to sort of pick your brain a little bit in the sense of what your thoughts are. Firstly, with the composition.
I don't mind the composition actually. I like the way that the maker place the bride on one side and leave all this negative space on the right side. I would prefer to be opposite, and the maker has the negative space on the other side. Okay, so this gives you more attention to the subject. But for me, the foremost important thing about the image again is contrast light for the portrait and zero editing.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Nick, because when I first saw this photo, and we all talk about refinement as photographers, and with everyone out there as wedding photographers, we always need to remember that every wedding we photograph, we need to have that 1% improvement on every wedding that you do. Now, easy for me to say because I worked out the other week that I've photographed 2,000 weddings. But I think every wedding that we go out on, we need to be a little bit of the better person than what we were on the previous wedding. I think that's number one. And looking at this image, just a little thing for this shot which I think could have worked better. And I guess if you have a close look on the fringe, you can see a lot of flyaway hair. So when we're talking about refinement, it's very hard to always go up to a bride and fix their hair all the time. But it is also something that those little flyaways could have been helped in post-production. Just by removing the hair, not only there, but also to the side, and look at the fringe here. And even these little flyaway strays, they can easily be removed or darkened, because I'm not too sure with that category what sort of retouching can be done and not done.
And if you're, at home watching, they're pointing to those flyaways through sort of the curls and the waves in the bride's hair.
Yes, correct.
And that they can be corrected.
Yeah. Nick, the reason I asked you about composition, because I wasn't a big fan of it, because how I looked at it was, and you tell me, I guess you said your thoughts, but it's here nor there. It's not that much negative space. She's almost in the middle. Do you get me? I would have liked to have seen even more negative space. And if anything, if this helps for the author too, is the fact that, when you've got a white wall compared to the black wall we were talking about before, to blow the highlights out can give a very angelic feel.
Right.
What do you think about that, Michelle?
I actually think that the cropping is quite interesting because it feels to me that this is that moment of tension of just before you walk down the aisle. And every bride, every woman knows that moment of like the most tension right before you walk down the aisle. The eyes kind of go down and you're forced to feel that tension because she's so close to the edge. So I think the maker's really trying to express that like moment of that tension. So I actually really enjoy the way that this is cropped so tight to the edge. I almost think it could go a little tighter to the edge, right? But I do agree with hair is one of the hardest things to retouch. We know that as retouchers, but going in there to clean that up and give that hair a more almost Hollywood finished look would bring our eye to that tension and that expression instead of focusing on, the flyaway hairs.
Again, I might maybe it's only assuming.
Yeah,
I can't be sure because I was not there.
Right.
But as far as I understand, this is like maybe before she get into to the ceremony or whatever.
Right.
I can see the orange light from the spotlight coming from the top,
Right.
and I can see that the blow highlight on the shoulder coming most likely from the top light. So it's ambient light environment. So most likely the maker has no control of the light because of the environment.
Right.
And that's why this is the way that we have dark eyes and
So what you're saying, Nick, you've worked out that the light's coming from the opposite end. So if the photographers may be watching this or listening to us today, maybe the bride should have been turned the opposite way. Maybe the light would have fallen on her face better. Yeah, feel light. There you go.
Sure, but if she's about to walk down the aisle and the aisle is that way, that's the way she's facing, guys.
Well, we don't, Michelle, we don't know that.
We don't
know that.
And that's the beauty of this and how subjective it can be and how, as judges, we can read into a story and want to create something that it makes sense to us in our own mind. And
Definitely.
so that's the beautiful part about Print competition and having 5 very unique judges judge these images and have a discussion about them and to really dive into it and figure it out. And so what I love about it annoys you. You know what I mean? And I'm like, I love that tension right before she's walking down the aisle.
Well,
and you're like, turn her face. She needs different light. Beautiful expression. Yeah. Gentlemen,
Yep.
I think we have time for just one more.
Only?
Just
Is
one
it
more.
half an hour already?
Yeah, it kind of is.
Guys, come on.
I'm
We're
a-
going to go
let's do
another
one
2
more.
hours here. You guys want to hang around another 2 hours? How about that? Does that sound good?
Let's just do one more, and then we'll go from there. All
Yeah,
right.
Let's do that. All righty. Wow. You know what? In my younger days, Michelle.
Yes.
I used to like that goth look,
Okay.
I used to not date women with, my wife's not here at the moment, so.
Let's
but-
stick to the image
Yes,
tomorrow.
that's all right. Fair enough. Fair enough. All righty. So, at first impact, I really enjoy looking at this image. I definitely feel that there is a story behind this. For me, the way the subject is walking down the stairs, whether she was walking down the stairs or whether she was posed down the stairs, for
Right.
me, that's great because of the fact that I can't pick it. So, whether she was posed or not, she was walking. I do like the pose, and I love the mood in her face, the way the photographers captured that as well. The perspective maybe could have worked a little bit better, but overall, I'm a fan of this shot. Nick, what can you pick at when it comes to this photo?
What would you suggest to the maker to improve on this image?
I like the idea of how he posed the hand, but I don't like the idea of how he posed the lower part of the body.
So the legs.
So the legs was flat foot. And this is why we have square shoulders, because if you don't move the legs, you can't move the shoulders. So if she's flat foot on one step, she can't pose. So most likely doesn't work for us because of this.
Okay. So how would you adjust those legs? What would you tell her to do with her feet, Nick?
If she crossed the legs, that will be improved and create the S shape, and that will be improved overall image totally.
So cross one foot over the other?
Yeah.
What if the step isn't deep enough for that? Then what would you tell her to do?
Then
I'm just challenging you.
the location is not good enough to make a pose like this, right?
Yeah.
Michelle, you're being cheeky now, aren't
I
you?
know.
You're getting that confidence back.
I'm like, hey, so.
Well,
yeah.
going back to what you were saying, looking at the image, and I can only put myself in this image
Sure.
at the moment and feeling like I'm the photographer. If this lady was walking, and we all know, ladies and gentlemen, on a wedding dress especially, a lot of brides trip over their wedding dress, don't they? Because they can't walk forward just depending on the design of their dress. So what's always a good point, and what this photographer could have done was maybe do put one hand down, Michelle,
Yeah.
and pinch the dress upwards.
Sure.
So then you're guaranteeing you're seeing the shoe.
Right.
Now, seeing a shoe through the dress, I feel also completes it.
Right.
But it allows the bride or your subject to move a lot more freer.
Correct.
Therefore, the pose, if it's a pose or whether it's a natural movement,
Right.
is going to be a lot better flow.
Yeah.
So that's my thoughts behind that.
I also think when you're creating an image like this that has a strong vertical line, you've got to make sure that that line is vertical.
Yes.
And that you have equal parts of that wall. Go ahead, Nick.
Last but not least,
Yes.
I think not the appropriate lens for this kind of picture. It's too sharp everywhere. If you have a look, it's sharp from the first step to the end.
So a little bit lack of depth of field.
Yes,
Yeah.
a different lens, like maybe 85 or above,
Sure.
will be improved the final image for sure.
That's awesome. Any last thoughts, Mauro?
Yeah, well, the wall is a bit distracting. I'd like to see straight lines. But again, you know, I've always tried, for the many, many years of being a photographer myself, I've always tried to train myself when it came to the refinement.
Yes.
I think refinement is what defines a good photographer.
I agree.
Don't we all agree, Michelle? Yeah?
Absolutely.
Now, one thing that the both of you haven't noticed that really stood out like a sore thumb, and I'm hoping the photographer can listen here, but firstly, the wall's crooked, but have a look at those nasty patches on the actual, on the wall.
Yeah.
Now, that's so distracting. At second, after me looking from my right, I'm looking at those little patches. So, you know, that could have helped a little bit more there in post-production as well.
Yeah.
So
And in the
refinement.
creative category,
Yeah.
that's easy. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. That is a small detail. I want to thank you both for your time and your
Thanks.
expertise and
Thank
being
you
here
for having us,
at
Michelle.
the Icon Awards. We're here at the
Thank you,
Icon
Michelle. It
Awards.
was my honor.
Oh, you guys are awesome. We'd like to thank B&H Photo for sponsoring this again, and for Critiq for sponsoring the Icon Awards. We're very grateful. We'll be back later with another section of critiques, and thank you for joining us. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.